everybody, this is Chiedza Mavangira and Inspirational Cheese Stats right now. I've got a brand new series called When the Chains Break. When the Chains Break. It's going to be eye-opening and revolutionary. So I hope that you just join me and sit tight. If you've got any questions, please feel free to inbox me after this video. I'm going to break it up into segments, digestible segments. But we're going to start by reading Jeremiah 40 verse 4. Jeremiah 40 verse 4 reads, now in this moment, note time and context is being given. Now, in this present moment, behold means to see, to regard, to become aware of, to become conscious of, to acquire a knowledge, to become enlightened. Now, immediate moment, not later. Okay, not tomorrow. It's word specific. Now, in this very moment, behold, enlighten, regard, observe, see, realize, come to the cognition of the fact that I release you today. When you're released from bondage or slavery or chains, you're not released next week. That's a promise that can maybe not come to pass. You're not released yesterday. You're not released in 3 hours. You are released in a time-specific moment, and we start with now. So the moment of emancipation is now, as long as you allow your spirit to acquire wisdom. The release, the breaking of the bondage and the chains is instantaneous. The devil doesn't want you to know that. The enemy doesn't want you to know that. Now, instantaneous, in this moment, behold, regard, see, become enlightened, become aware, understand. I release you. You cannot release yourself from the chains that bind you. It takes a custodian of authority to release you. Let's examine chains in the metaphor of handcuffs. Chains in the metaphor of handcuffs require a key. They require a key to be loosed, and therefore you require a custodian, one whom is entrusted with your release, one who is authoritative of your bondage situation to release you. Hear me now. You will require a custodian of your captivity to be given the authorization to release you from that which binds you. No man can release himself from the bondage of chains. Now, in this moment, instantaneous, behold, regard, see, understand, believe, I, custodian of your captivity, release you today, context of immediacy, of how when you are being released, there is no delay from the chains that hold your hands. Why does the enemy bind our hands? Why doesn't he blindfold us? Why doesn't he bind our feet? Do you know that when you're arrested, even in modern day society, they handcuff your hands? If you see them throwing in the chains for the feet, that's just for added dramatic value. Because the moment that your hands are bound, you are incapacitated. I'm going to start by taking this from the top. Did you know that there's a difference between bondage and slavery? The difference between bondage and slavery is this. When you are a slave of a situation or to a person or to an environment, a mentality, an emotion, a socioeconomic discipline, a relationship, a deity, a spirituality, there's a difference between being a slave and being a bondage of. When you are bondaged, you cannot produce for yourself. When you are a slave, your production is limited to that which you do unto thy master. Hear me now. A lot of you are in bondage, not in slavery. A lot of you are in bondage, not in slavery. In fact, historical settings lend credence and understanding to slavery, because we can see the steps, we can see the gradient and the context in which one can unwillingly become a slave if we take the historical posture of looking at, say, the African Americans in the United States of America. And that's not the only example. There's many tribes and races that have been enslaved under the sun. Nothing is new under the sun. So a slave is one who is permitted in context to produce, but they do not benefit from what they produce. A slave produces for their master. A slave is released in pockets to pick cotton, to build buildings, to attend to certain things. But in slavery, all that you reap is for Caesar. So in a season of slavery, all that you reap will be for Caesar. In a season of bondage, you will reap nothing for yourself. In slavery, you have a master over you. In bondage, you do not. You have your ego, your pride, your confusion, your rebellion, your ignorance, your lack of understanding of the word of God. So a lot of you are in bondage and not slavery, because slavery takes ownership of a custodian over you. In modern day society, a lot of us have chosen bondage. Bondage is the captivity whereby our metaphysical, spiritual, mental, emotional, socioeconomical, political, financial hands are tied. And that means that we have lost the ability to reap produce for ourselves. In bondage, you're not even of production. You're not even producing, but having it taken away by Caesar. In bondage, a season of bondage, you have zero productivity. Whatever you touch turns to dust. Whatever you try fails. Whatever project you venture into meets failure. You cannot be successful when you're in a season of bondage. And so you have to understand whether you are in a season of slavery. A season of slavery merely requires emancipation from the master and you become productive. But oftentimes than not, people come out of slavery where they produce for others and they come into a season of bondage where they lack the ability to produce for self before they come into a season of prosperity. Because oftentimes your spirit is broken in slavery under the tyranny of a master. Your spirit is broken. Your imagination is contaminated. Your belief is clouded. You lose the ability to sincerely be able to behold, to perceive, to understand that you are able to be productive. So what season are you in? I'm going to let you guys ponder that, and I will be back with part 2 of the first pilot season of the Wisdom series entitled When Chains Break. Jeremiah 40 verse 4. Now behold, I release you today from the chains on your hands. Now I want to zoom into chains on your hands. We're going to explore the Victorian age and symbolism of hands. We're going to go into the pagan traditions, African culture, Eurocentric culture, and understand what the significance of the hands is. What does it mean when your hands are bound, when your hands are tied, when you do not have an ability to use your hands? Hands are used for communication, the ability to do many things, the ability to pray, a posture of worship. And so when your hands are bound, you're not only bound physically, you are bound emotionally, spiritually, mentally, financially, politically, socioeconomically. You are bound legally. You are bound in each and every way. There is no bond as devastating as a man to have his hands bound. So we're going to come back in the second episode and we're going to discuss the significance of hands, because these hands have to have a significance for the devil to attack them and to bind them, and to know that he doesn't need to blindfold you. He doesn't need to bring fire and brimstone down on you. He doesn't need to even bind your feet. He doesn't need to burn your village down. Your enemy only need bind your hands. And why? In prosperity, do we say that the sins or the bounds or the chains of shame, pain, sickness, limitations, lack, death, fear, failure, progress, curse, disappointment, rejection, bad luck, divorce, and instability are all symbolized in the hand? In your hand, you will find all the answers to your questions. Join me now.